Hi, I'm Bailey.
And I'm Abby.
And we're so excited to have you back for episode 2 of season 2 for the Who Are They podcast. Now, did you ever celebrate 2 Tuesday at school?
No, and that was really abrupt, dude.
Well, this made me think of it, okay?
Okay.
So my first year of teaching, I was teaching 3rd grade, and it was 2/2/22 on a Tuesday. So it was February 2nd, 2022, and it all fell on a Tuesday. And we were going to have this really fun Tuesday day. Like, all the worksheets were going to be Tuesday stuff. We were going to learn about it all day long. And then we had a snow day. And so everything that we had already copied, we were like, well, we made these copies already. So we ended up celebrating it like multiple days later. And the kids were like, why were we even celebrating this? And I had to be like, well, it was 2/2 Tuesday.
Right.
And not anymore. And they weren't really into it because they were 8. It wasn't so exciting when it wasn't the day. But that's what that reminds me of. This is our like Tuesday podcast, right? Because it's season 2, episode 2, and it comes out on a Tuesday. So this is our Tuesday
actually,
podcast.
I forgot we come out on Tuesdays.
Yeah, so this is our
We
Tuesday
generally
podcast.
record on Mondays, like before it's going to come out.
Yeah, like a week in advance. So sometimes we forget.
If you watch our videos or you see our TikToks, you're going to notice that I am in a completely different location. I'm trying to be positive about it all. We had some technical difficulties. It's an hour later than we were going to record.
Yep.
And my personal computer hates me. So I had to drive to work, and here we are. I'm in my classroom. Maybe there'll be a little classroom reveal at the end or something. I don't know. Maybe this will be the new place I record. Who knows? But here we are.
Yes. Such an eventful time already.
Yeah.
Am I starting with the catch-up this week?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So my students had their 5th grade play this past weekend. Fantastic, fabulous job. Just the amount of money and time and effort that goes into these 5th grade productions is way more than even went into a high school production from where I'm from. So good. And then Saturday, my boyfriend Jacob and I took a cooking class. And it was my Christmas gift that we finally had time to make time for, and we
That's
had
been
a
a
date.
while.
And yeah, it was a while. Well, it took me a while to like remember to call the lady and schedule it.
Right.
And then when I was scheduling it, we could only do Saturdays really because it's like a 3-hour class. And so we were busy for a while, and then we went and we made macarons, but not macaroons. I can't even remember the way this lady said it. Okay.
I'm sorry the amount of times you said that.
I think it was macaron, as she would always say. But the little colorful kind of sandwich-looking cookies.
What's the difference?
So I don't really recall what actual macaroon is, but it's some sort of French cookie. And when I called her, she has a list of things that she has classes for on her websites. And the colorful little macaroon, we all call it a macaroon, okay? So I'm going to call it that. Right. That cookie was on her website. So I call and I say, hey, that's the class I'd like to take. We'd like to take the macaroon class.
Right.
And she was like, she's like, I don't mean to be uppity, but do you mean a macaron or a macaron, like the colorful cookie? And I was like, yes. She's like, well, I just really did have to ask because I have had people call me before and ask for a macaroon, and I assume it's the French cookie because that's what's on my website, the little colorful one.
Yeah.
And then they've come to my lesson and they've been like, no, we actually wanted to make this other cookie, which is really called the macaroon.
Oh, interesting.
So every time she would say it properly, but I forget. Now, this was like a really fun cooking class.
Really?
So it was one-on-one. It was just this lady. We go to her home. Her home, she's got like this
house.
Her house, and she has an extra kitchen in her house for teaching personal lessons.
No way.
Yeah, so she's bougie. and she like went to French pastry school, and she's a cooking, like a baking teacher in at a Nashville private school, all this
That's
stuff.
crazy.
So she's a pretty cool lady, and then teaches out of her house. And she's from Canada, and I found out her husband played for the Canadian lacrosse team.
Interesting.
I was like, all right. Anyways, we make these cookies. I made a strawberry macaron,
Mm-hmm.
and Jacob made a chocolate one with like coffee frosting in it.
Oh, cool.
And let me tell you, there are so many steps to make these cookies. They are not necessarily hard to make, but you have to be really particular with them for them to turn out. But
I've
each
heard
of us,
that before.
yes, they're very particular. And she even like got out a blowtorch at one point, and she was like
Oh.
blowtorching the bottom of the KitchenAid mixer to like heat up the eggs without cooking them because they need to
What?
be in a warm bowl. And I said to myself, if I ever make these, that step will have to not be in there because I'm not going out
Right.
and buying like a creme brulee
Can you
torch just to
imagine?
make macaroons because I don't make them enough. And I think it would turn out, honestly, they would probably turn out fine. Just you might get like 2 or 3 less cookies
Yeah.
because
yeah.
based on like how you prepare the egg whites, like depends on how much batter you get. So the
Or, like,
better
how
you
fluffy
prepare it,
is or something.
yeah. So the better you prepare it, the more cookies you'll get out of the batter.
Right.
But everything else, it was not necessarily hard. But if you're not particular, they're not going to turn out.
Mm-hmm.
And we each made like with our little batches, and she gave us the recipes, like 40 cookies.
Whoa.
So it makes a lot. So I think it took us 3 hours for this class,
Mm-hmm.
which we were very tired at the end. But it was like her explaining it. We made chocolate cookies, we made strawberry cookies, and we came out with like 80 cookies. So
That's
I said,
crazy.
honestly, if I were to practice this and get pretty good at it, I think
Mhm.
I could cut an hour off that time because she wouldn't be
Right.
talking. Maybe even an hour and a half. And I go to get that many cookies, and they're so cute and colorful.
Yeah.
So I think that's gonna be my new obsession for a little while. Is I'll be making macarons, and you can freeze them.
Oh.
Like you can make just the top cookie part, and then put it in the
Mhm.
freezer, and then whenever you're ready to take it out, you eat it.
Yeah,
Or
that's
prepare
good.
it. So this is so fun. I said, I'm gonna be the macaron lady. I said every event I'll bring the little cookies, and how cute is that? Like, oh, she knows how to make macarons. That's so cute.
That would be
Um,
so funny.
Isn't and it was like she was explaining like every little, like this was an official cooking class because she would be like, this pairs with this, and this is how you get this, and if you learn how to make this is ganache, but if you let it sit
Oh.
for an hour, it turns into peanut butter stuff, and if you let it
What?
sit like this, or you add one more ingredient, it turns into this. And I
Oh.
was like, oh. Anyways, I learned so much. I know how to make this cookie. And then my last thing for our catch up today was the solar eclipse. And
Yeah.
in Nashville, we had like 90 to 95% coverage. So
Mhm.
it was pretty good, but it was so cloudy here. So I was at school today, and the kids had to get permission slips signed to wear glasses and go outside. And it was so cloudy that I think for a total, we were out there for probably half an hour. I think total time, we probably only saw the sun for a minute.
Oh.
But you could always tell when the sun came back out behind the clouds because you would like look around, and then you'd hear kids go, yeah! They were cheering the sun on. It was so cute.
That's
And then
funny.
everybody would look up at their glasses, and you'd see a little sliver, and the kids would cheer the whole time. And then you
Yeah.
knew it went behind a cloud because then you'd hear, "Aw." But it was kind of a bummer. We were excited because that was our 5th grade curriculum this year.
Right.
We learned about solar eclipses, but then it was
Mhm.
like, golly, we missed it.
Ours, we could have taken our kids out 6th hour because our like time frame of like the most that the sun was covered was, I think, a little after 3:00. So it was like starting earlier than that. Our school day ends at 2:40. And so we could have taken them outside during that time period. I chose not to because I hadn't sent emails home to parents, and I like had other stuff I needed to get done today, and they were mad at me for it. But after the school day was over, I stood outside with like my principal and like 5 other teachers, and we just stood out there for like a half an hour and stared up at the sun the whole time.
Right, because it's
And
actually covered for a while.
Ours was covered for a long time, and ours we had about 94, I think, coverage.
Okay.
And it wasn't nearly as dark as I thought it would be. Like, it was really hazy,
No.
and like it was definitely much darker. Like if you went inside and like looked to the outdoors, it was like early morning light, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But like it was still cool. It was like we could only see a teeny, like it was like a toenail.
Yeah, that was ours too when we could see it. And I also feel like if you watch videos of the eclipse, it really only gets dark when it's fully covered.
Yeah.
When it's fully covered, it like switches to like nighttime. I was
Mm-hmm.
told back in 2017 in Nashville it was a total eclipse over the city, and they
Mm.
said street lights came on and everything.
Yeah.
And I was like, that would be so cool. And guess when the next one is? 2044.
Shut up.
So that's a bummer.
Well, there's got to be total solar eclipse before that. Like they happen all the time. It's just in different parts of the world.
Right. So you'd have to go somewhere else for it. But I
Yeah.
think the one that's supposed to be closest to this, like
Right.
the U.S. in this type of path, is 2044.
Wow.
Isn't that wild?
Well, I am excited about the weather because here in Michigan, we are
Mm.
finally getting consistent 60-degree days, if not above.
Oh, that's
So-
almost better than us.
Today was, I mean, by consistent, I mean like this week it's supposed to be 60 degrees or above for 3 days in a row.
Okay.
So today was 72, which was perfect and sunny.
Ooh. That is
And it was
nice.
perfect for the eclipse. It was wonderfully warm outside. Tomorrow it's supposed to be the same. And then the end of the week is supposed to go down to the 40s. But then all next week is supposed to be 60s.
Oh, nice.
So to me, it just makes my life happier and brighter. I'm happy to be at work. I am happy to wake up in the morning. Everything is better. We have 8 weeks of school left, so I am counting down the days.
Mm.
But today didn't feel that bad. And I think it's because the sun is like fully rose by the time I'm heading to work now.
When do you get out of school? Because I think we only have 6 weeks.
The last week of May.
I feel like that's when I get out too. But I
Well,
could
girl,
be wrong.
trust me, I have counted every single day. It's on my calculator. My gosh.
You know
it's
what?
on my
Maybe we
calendar.
have. Do you have like? Okay, it's only Monday. I think we must get out the 23rd. Okay, so we
Oh,
probably just get out a
okay.
week before you.
Yeah.
So whoever said 6
Well-
weeks probably wasn't counting this week.
My biggest catch up thing, aside from like weather and all of that, is that this weekend, Lori, my friend from college, came to stay with me.
Oh,
And she came on Thursday night, and then she came to school with me all day Friday. So honestly, that's what kept me going through the last few weeks of work, because even before spring break, like just getting me motivated was waiting for Lori to come.
Mm.
And that was so fun because she came and she's an engineer. And so we got to talk to the kids, and she like had a little presentation on what she does for her job and how engineering relates to math and how she uses math in her daily life at work.
Oh.
And then in more of the presentation we had, I asked a bunch of people on Facebook, like, how do you use math in your life? And what's your job? Can you give me some feedback? And a bunch of people gave a ton of great options. And so I used those as examples for the kids. And then we had a really like nice long conversation about how they use math in their lives, or how people they know use math in their lives.
Mm.
And some of my classes, I think, were bored and didn't know what to talk about. And like, they're just not as talkative.
Right.
In my 6-hour class, actually, we had the most fun in that one because, one, they're crazy. And I don't even feel bad saying this because every single one of them know it. That class drives me insane
Mm-hmm.
because there's 31 of them, and it has every single talkative kid possible.
Oh. Yes.
But it made the activity so much more fun because they were so talkative, had so many questions, had so many like fun things they wanted to know about Lori, about our friendship, about jobs, about college, all of that. So it was so cute and really fun. And I think they had a lot of fun having her there and just doing something out of the norm. And for me,
good.
it made me feel like I wasn't doing a normal day of work. It made me feel like I could just have fun with the kids. And I love those days. So
Oh.
that was my biggest catch up. And then she stayed for the weekend and we just kind of hung out and chilled. But
Oh.
Yeah.
That sounds really fun.
I know.
So
Okay.
productive.
Well, yeah, kind of. If you were to see the space around me, you wouldn't think so.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't want anyone to walk in my classroom right now.
Yeah. Anyways, you ready for the history?
Yes, I have a history of the day, and it is an excerpt from my journal in the year of 2020.
Oh, long time ago.
Yes. And so this was COVID. We were still living in our house. And also my journal, LOL.
I know. I
Real
looked at that and I recognized it.
Yes, it's like vintage simplicity patterns because in this year that was my aesthetic.
It really
I
was
wanted
for a
it to
while.
be. Yes. So this is April 17th, 2020, and I'm only going to read you bits of it. But I start this prayer. It's a prayer.
Oh, okay.
And I started with, "Hey God," which is very college.
Yeah.
"Hey God." And then I go, "My life feels very out of control right now. My my summer was canceled."
Oh, because you were gonna go on a mission trip with Next Step, weren't
I
you?
was going to work with them again because I had worked with them the summer before in West Virginia, and I was going to do that, and then they canceled it. So I must have been down bad when I
I
wrote
think
this.
you were gonna go to Haiti.
That was the first year.
Oh,
This
okay.
second year, I was going to
JK.
go back to West Virginia, but yes, that happened to me
Okay.
before. Okay, I had to move back home. We're all stuck in our homes, and I still need to find a job. Lord, and then I go, "Lord," and being friends with Christians instead of really talking sometimes, they just say, "Did you pray about it?" Or, "God."
Why is that so relatable and so funny? Oh my
or
gosh.
or God will work it out. And the thing is, I know this is hard to read. I know these things, but didn't God give us company or yeah, didn't God give us company on this earth so we could talk things out?
Stop it. Stop. That is
I was
so
mad at
funny.
people. Yes. And then I talk about West Virginia. And then I start I blah blah blah, I'm boring for a minute, and then I go, "God, I know you're using this time for something, but it is hard. Seeing all of these couples has been hard as well. I don't know what couples I'm seeing because I'm in deep quarantine." I go, "Especially because I know there is no chance that I will meet anyone."
You were just, that's hilarious. You were just really struggling, and anytime you're struggling and you're single, the topic of singleness just comes up and you have to mention it.
Right. Those are like the most important things I put in here. I just really chuckled when I talked about when you're friends with Christian people and they just go, "Did you pray
That
about
is
it?"
so funny because I'm like yes or and no. Like sometimes
Right.
I do, sometimes I don't. But like, what's God gonna do? I mean,
Like,
okay, that sounds horrible. That actually sounds
don't
horrible.
clip that. Don't clip that.
Okay, what I mean by that is like God's not going to change everything that's happening
Right.
immediately, right? Like it's
Right.
not going to be some. Now, could God work a miracle?
For
Yes.
sure.
But like God's not going to drop a job in your lap and be like, "Oh, here," and automatically you have a job, boom, and boyfriend, boom, dropped in your lap, right? It's like we have to do some work also. And I think prayer most of the time, instead of changing our situations, tends to change our outlook.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so I think that's the biggest uh not reason for prayer, but like outcome of prayer.
Right. Like I notice like one prayer that is always a yes is if I ask for my heart to be changed. If I ask for my heart
Yeah.
to be changed about something, that is always a yes. I might have to
Mhm.
pray it a few times, but it will always get there.
Right. I don't know. I also get a little bit annoyed with that sometimes because I'm like, just let me process. Don't just
Can
tell
we
me
just
to pray.
chat
Let
about
me
it?
process.
Like there's a lot going on right now. Maybe we just chat.
Yeah. Prayer
Um
can be really helpful. I think there are some times where it's like not helpful to talk situations out.
right.
But if it's about a job,
Yeah, I don't know. I wish I know like the context of that cuz someone must have said that to me about something.
that is so funny though. You were down in the dumps that day.
I was down bad. Like there's some other stuff in there. I'm not going to read it, but I was down.
Well, I just remember quarantine and COVID, and I remember we had moved home, like to our houses with our families.
Mhm.
And the one thing I remember is before we could see each other, we would FaceTime all the time.
Right.
And while we were FaceTiming, we would not speak to each other. We would literally be scrolling TikTok.
Right.
And at the time, we followed the Christian boys on TikTok. They were like the cute Christian boys.
Yes, we were so deprived.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and we would do that, and then we would watch their lives together
Yeah,
and FaceTime each other.
actually.
Honestly, we just needed human company. That wasn't the people
yeah.
we lived with.
Mm-hmm.
So we just kept each other company. Every once in a while, we'd comment on it. We would watch the same videos.
Yeah, we would. That's so funny.
Honestly, good memories from that. A little bit. Like that portion, hilarious.
Oh, I think it was absolutely hilarious. I remember us filling out some of those, like, let me
That was
set
a
you up with people.
trend. I
Yeah.
forgot during quarantine, people on TikTok would make Google Forms and they would try to matchmake you.
I always wanted someone to matchmake me, not because I think at the time I would have done anything about it, but because I just think it would have been absolutely hilarious.
We were never matched.
No, and it bums me out. I'm like, seriously? You had me fill that out for nothing.
Well, I think they would end up with way too many Google Forms.
Oh, agreed. For sure. But like,
they would get famous off of it. That was wild. Or people would post like videos of their brother and they'd be like, you should date my brother because of this.
I've still seen some of those. And I, not gonna lie, every time I see one that's with a cute man, I am just a little tempted. And
I mean,
thing
why not
is,
shoot your shot, Abby?
well, here's the problem. It's like I know I would never end up with him. It's just the idea, right? And it's always people that live all the way across the country from me. So what am I gonna do?
Right. You wouldn't even really want to necessarily.
Right. In my mind, I would want to. In reality, I don't think I want to.
Right.
Anyways, our topic this week is about sharing your faith.
Right. How to do it. Why you should do it.
Yeah,
All of
we
the
just have
above.
some questions that I think Bailey's church went through a little bit.
Yes, I was my Bible study at my church for women. We started a new study called How to Share Your Faith, and we had a panel for that a few people sat on that were of different ages, and I got to sit on this panel, so I was given this list of questions, and we had to answer these questions for the group. And so I thought, let's bring these questions on the pod and answer them for the pod.
I think it's fun, not because I think that Bailey and I have all the answers necessarily, or like, or that I feel I'm right about everything. I think I've learned in my faith that there are things I'm learning, or my perspective get changed based on time or different conversations I have with people.
Right.
But I think it's fun to have a conversation like this to, one, encourage us as we're just sitting here having the conversation, but also to encourage other people that are listening.
Right. And my pastor did say this week, he goes, I laugh a little bit when I see the 25-year-olds on Instagram giving marriage advice.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's not the person I probably want to be listening to.
Mm-hmm.
And I go, we're not, like, I guess in a sense we're giving advice. Also, we have more experience being a Christian than we do married. Yeah. So that's a little bit helpful, but it's not necessarily we're like really qualified to give you a bunch of advice, but it's really, it is good to have these conversations.
I think
to just get chatting about it.
Yeah. And
practically.
just having conversations about God, I think just grows your relationship and grows your faith and encourages people, because I know for me, I'm so much more encouraged and propelled forward in my faith when I have the conversations about it than when I'm just like living it alone.
Right. Okay. Why do you think it's important for us as believers to share our faith with others? Why are you laughing?
Because you said the word faith wrong.
I know.
Or like you just had a stumble. I think it's important because that's one of the biggest things that we're called to do.
Right. Like the Great Commission.
Yeah.
Like you have to okay. You have to do it, but this is where people get tripped up on whether we have a works-based faith or we do faith-based works, right? So it's not you do it because you have to do it to be saved, but because you are saved, that's what you should long to do, right? If you're truly saved, you should long to have a faith that produces works, and those works are telling other people about God or showing God in your life.
And if you're having that relationship with God that's continually building, I think you want to do it anyways.
Right.
Because it just naturally will spill out of you.
And
And
even
when,
if, sorry, go.
I was just going to say, when I use the word that's what we're called to, I don't use the word called lightly, because I feel like a lot of people use the word called as in, oh, I feel called to go here, or I felt called to talk to this person, or I felt called to do this or this or this. And I'm not saying that those people are wrong when they say it that way, but I think using the word called, it gives the idea that you heard God's voice or God spoke to you. And not that I don't think that God can speak, but I think it's so rare in this time, and that it's hard for me to believe when people say that. So
Right.
I try, and I don't do it all the time, but I try to use the word called when I'm talking about scripture or ways that God has spoken to us through his word, and not just in ways that I'm thinking God has spoken to me.
Right. Because yeah, I think a lot of people also get tripped up when certain people say they're called to do something, because others think, well, I've never been called to do something in particular, so
Right.
must not be for me. Like, I don't have to
Yeah.
share my faith because I haven't felt called to do that. But it's like
Yeah.
scripture calls you to do that. Even if it doesn't feel like God's told you personally that you're called to share your faith with the person next to you or anyone. The way you live your life is a testimony also to who you follow.
Yeah. I think that it jumps into the whole, we don't all have to go be missionaries. I don't have
Right.
to move to Africa to share my faith. I don't have to be an evangelist or work in a church or work in a ministry to be able to share my faith with people.
Right.
I think sharing your faith a lot of the time comes down to the way that you live and the relationships that you build, and within that, it gets where you can share your faith.
Right. And I think about it a lot when I think of a lot of things in the aspect of being a teacher, because that's my job. That's what I know. If you're an accountant, you probably think of a lot of things in terms of being an accountant. But in order for my students to even listen to me, a lot of times I have to establish that relationship with them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And if I really want them to hear the things and take in the things I'm saying and really value those things, then I need to have that relationship with them. And so sharing your faith is really important, but you can't just tell people that they should follow God without also trying to love them and have a relationship with them.
Right.
And it's like, maybe not everybody, maybe you do meet someone and you share your faith or you pray with them or something. You might not have a continuing relationship with them, but the way that you act with them and the way that you show them love in that moment is also a way to gain trust.
Yeah. We had a conversation like that, and I wasn't super involved in it, but I was kind of listening on spring break. I think it was my mom and my cousin, or a couple of people in my family, were talking about in Ephesians, and I don't know it like exactly what the scripture is off the top of my head, but it says like speak the truth in love to one another, right?
Right.
Yeah, rather speaking the truth in love, we are to grow in every way into him who is the head, into Christ. And it's Ephesians 4:15. And that's just talking about like unity within the body of Christ. And I think that it's hard to combine truth and love together.
Right.
But if you're going to share truth with somebody in their life and tell them they're doing something wrong, or share ways that they can grow, or whatever. And I think this gets a little different, because I think this is more something you do with your Christian friends, not necessarily with people that aren't Christians.
Right.
But you have to pair that with loving them and coming alongside somebody and working towards something with them. And I think when it comes to sharing your faith, it's something that I've been a part of a lot of different philosophies on sharing your faith. And I think mine has changed over the years. But I'm forgetting where I was, but I'm going to jump into the different philosophies or like things that I have had. The church I grew up in was more like, let's go invite people to church, knock on people's doors, talk to random people, and all of that. And I think because the church I grew up in was more unhealthy, we didn't really have relationships outside the church. That was kind of the way we had to go about sharing our faith, because our friends and we didn't really know people, at least I didn't, that weren't Christians, and I would argue that most people in the church didn't as well. And so when I was growing up, it was more like, oh, let me invite this random person, or this person I meet, or the person that helps me at the grocery store, or all of these things. And even if it was just an invitation to church, maybe not go so far as share your salvation with them, but
Right.
it was more of the, I don't know you, but I'm going to tell you about God, which that always scared the crap out of me. Right. And because I was like, I'm not an evangelist. I don't really talk to people about all of that. Like, I feel like I'm not good at that, all these things. And I think growing up and moving away from that church, and I don't know their perspectives on it now, I've been away from it long enough, but now my perspective is I share my faith by the way that I live and the way that I love people and I present myself. And in my job, I mention that I go to church, right? I'm not going to sit here and tell all my students all about following God and salvation and my salvation story, right? Like, that's not what I can do in my job.
Right.
No, I could do that in friendships or whatever, right? But I think it's in how I love the people around me and how those relationships can lead to something later on. And even just the fact that I mentioned that I go to church, I think leaves an opening for people to have conversations with you also if they're ready for that.
Right. Yeah, I would say my students know I go to church, because even if they ask what you did this weekend, like, that can come up. That's not against the rules.
Right.
And some of my students go to church with me. And so even just them seeing me in the classroom and then them seeing me at church, even being consistent there, being there every week, saying hi and all that stuff, I think that goes a long way too, of like, this is someone in my life. I feel like we're getting off topic a little bit, but this is someone in my life that is a person I respect in my life, and seeing them here and seeing them faithful, even if we've not sat down and talked particularly about my faith, it's like, hopefully that I am that person that, or one of the people, I hope they have many, hopefully I'm one of those people that they look at and go, I would like to live a life like that, because it looks like she is faithful and she is like in God, or peace with God. And like, I think that is another way where you share your faith in that way, just by honestly being faithful.
Yeah. I feel like we're very far off our question, but
yes,
we didn't say anything bad.
The question was
like
also,
our conversation.
How do you share your faith with others? So it doesn't just
it was, why do you think it's important?
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's true.
I think it's important because God literally gave us the Great Commission and said, go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Matthew 28, 19 and 20.
Oh.
I know that because there was a song on some CD, like when I was a kid. I could sing you this whole song. But it was like, it quoted the scripture. I'm trying so hard not to sing it right now. And then it would like go through the whole thing. Fun fact, still have this CD in my car right now because I found it like last year. And I was like, I'm stealing this. Like, I know it's so stupid, but every once in a while I just put it on.
That's actually incredible, because you know what? Now you remember that to this day.
I know.
So little things that you share with your children that they remember forever. The next question, did you want to ask that one, or do you want me to ask it again?
You just keep going, girl.
All right. So it's, why do you think it's so hard and scary to share your faith? I know this one right away. We all like rejection.
Oh, yeah. But I also think in culture, religion is something that people just shy away from. Like, that people don't love to talk about all the time.
Right. Yeah.
So you don't want to offend anybody.
Yes. A lot of people are afraid of offending others.
And you don't want to ruin a relationship.
Right. And I feel like we've almost gone so far into not offending people that we just don't talk to people. Like, you don't get deep with people because you're
Oh,
afraid you're
yeah.
going to offend them.
Right. Yeah, actually, I feel like I tend to live in that little bubble a lot of the time.
Yeah, because there are some people where it feels like if I were to tell them I go to church, they would instantly shut me out. Like, they're done
I
hearing what I
don't
have to
feel
say.
that way, but
I feel
maybe
like
that's
I've
because I'm
definitely
not
met
friends
people
with
like
enough
that.
people.
Well, I wouldn't say a lot of them are necessarily my friends, but I have met people
Mm-hmm.
like that where it's like you're almost hesitant to even say you go to church because
Right.
you don't know what they're going to say to that. But it's hard and it's scary because a lot of times you're afraid of being rejected. We're afraid of being rejected in everything.
And
And being like rejected in your faith or something that you're passionate about and trying to share, and if someone just shuts you down, I think the thing is we don't know what to say after that.
right, right. I think what I was going to add a second ago was I just think we put a lot of uh, pressure on ourselves to get it right too,
Mhm.
and that sharing our faith is about me. If I'm going to share my faith, it's about me. And the thing is, we forget to take ourselves out of it. Like,
Yes.
sharing my faith is not about me. And this is so easy to say right now. I don't know that I have had this perspective when I'm in the situation, right? That's too hard. um but, but I think we forget that it's about God and the mission that God set for us when he sent his son here, and that's what that's the epitome of what we believe in
Right.
as Christians. And so it's like, okay, if I'm going to follow Jesus Christ who came and died on the cross and rose again for me, and that's why I believe what I believe, it shouldn't be about me and who's my friend and who's not my friend. It should be about, are we sharing the gospel with people so that they can end up in heaven someday?
Yeah.
Like, you can't do, like, it's not on you whether
No.
someone accepts Christ into their life or not.
No, and we like to think that it really really is.
Yeah.
And the thing is too, if you are sharing the gospel in a way that's God honoring, then you are glorifying God in what you're doing. And whether or not that person rejects you, whether or not that person accepts it, if they do anything like, well, also, they're not rejecting you, they're rejecting God. So
Yeah.
even that, like, it's not about you at all. But even you sharing it, you are doing in your intention the best to glorify God. And
Mm-hmm.
God will do with that what he will, whether that
Right.
person comes to faith or they don't. And so if they come to faith or they don't, it's not about you.
Right.
But are you doing what God wants you to do? Are you glorifying him? And if you're sharing your faith, then yes, you
Yeah.
are.
Yeah. I think so too. Sometimes I get into this weird like mentality where here we sit talking about sharing our faith,
Mm-hmm.
and I start to think, okay, well, I'm not always sharing my faith. I'm not talking about how to become a Christian. I'm not all these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I just go, okay, well, am I not doing this? Or should I be doing this more? And then I think about my relationships with people that maybe aren't Christians or don't go to church that I know of.
Mm.
And I just think, I don't think it's not that it's not my place, right? But
Right.
I just don't think I necessarily have relationships with those people that's well enough to say. And currently, I'm thinking about coworkers and
Right.
people like because I don't really know a lot of people outside of that realm that I could have conversations like this with. And I don't think those situations are places where I would be like, oh, let me sit down and tell you all about my salvation story. And I
Right.
just really need you to know that I love Jesus and this is what he did for me, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
think it just comes down to loving those people, letting them know you go to church, and continually just being a positive influence. And then if they have questions, they can come to you, but not shying away from bringing the fact that you go to church and do those things.
Right. I feel like I have this past school year been working on making sure that I'm not part of gossip at work, which is really, really hard. And just
That's
like all those little tiny things.
so hard.
Like I try my best, like not to feed into anything, especially when
Mm-hmm.
you're working a job where you deal with people.
Yeah.
And I feel like just making those little steps to be like, I'm not going to participate in this without shaming people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to participate in this and I'm going to have this attitude, but I'm also going to be real, like a real person with you.
Right.
And I feel like that has really paid off this year, as people will tell me things, which is good. I want people to do that if they're confident I'm not going to go around
Mm-hmm.
and tell things, but also like they make comments about my faith without me even having to sit down and
Yeah.
have like deep conversations. Like they don't
Right.
necessarily know my testimony, but they know that how I act and things I do and things I don't do.
Yeah.
And they see like they have nothing bad to say about
Right.
it.
Mm-hmm.
Even that is a testimony, you know.
Yeah. Which I forget sometimes. I think when we think about sharing our faith or thinking about having a testimony, it has to be this big thing. And I'm looking ahead at a question. Maybe this will be our last question. But I'm looking ahead at this question that says, when sharing your faith, we often talk about sharing what God is doing or has done in your own life. What advice do you have for the woman who feels, or person who feels like they don't have a powerful or dramatic story to share? And then in parentheses says, maybe this person grew up in a Christian home and has followed Jesus their whole life.
I felt like that for the longest time. And I was like, I don't have a story like this person. I wish I had this story. And as I got older, I realized like how blessed I was to, one, not have to have gone through those things. But someone said something once to me that was, they said, how lucky are you that there has not been a time in your life that you were without God? Because they said, I remember the time in my life when I was without God and it was a dark time. And you never had to experience that. And I just think what a blessing that testimony is. Like, we all still have suffering in our testimony. You know, we all still go through hard things. But I've had God with me along the way the entire time.
Yeah.
And I just think that is such a blessing. And to look down at your story thinking it's not exciting is such a human thing.
Right, right.
And it really is something that we want to be about us. We want to have the exciting testimony because we want the attention, but all the attention is for God, and God's going to get the attention no matter what. And he can use any story because you are going to relate to someone. Part of something in your life has related to someone else, even if it's just like you both have felt jealousy for something.
Yeah.
Like there's always something that you can relate to with other people. And talking to my boyfriend, who's not quite as, he's an emotional person, but I'm like a really emotional person. And he's really good at like, golly, something in my throat. He's really good at like, like stepping to the side and being like, well, this story isn't even about me at all. So what's it matter if my story is exciting or not? Like it's all supposed to be about God. So why am I sitting here worried about whether or not my story is exciting?
Yeah.
And like that might not sound encouraging, but I'm the type of person where I feel like I get so emotional that I love it when people tell me that it has nothing to do with me. Like it's not about me. It's all about God. Because then I can step back and I can say, wow, one, I've had a blessing of a life. Two, who cares? Like it doesn't matter. There's nothing to worry about.
I think I like that perspective because I think I've heard it before, but whatever way that you just said it was really good. I'm trying to think of what you just said about in all the hard things. I liked what you just said about in all the hard things you've gone through. There's never been a time when you were without God.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I had a struggle at one point too of being like, well, my story's not interesting because I also grew up in a Christian home, and I think there's a point at which we just want to have this story that it becomes prideful.
Yeah.
Of, I want to be able to talk about this and I want to be able to share this and whatever. But that's, like you said, that's just not what it's supposed to be about. Mm-hmm. And I think I've definitely fell into that before. like in my testimony or things I'm sharing, I just want to tell people about the hard things in life that I've gone through
Mm-hmm.
and have them not feel bad for me, but be like, oh my gosh, wow, that's crazy. Instead
Right.
of like making it about, I went through this thing, but here's how God changed my perspective on
Right.
life because of it and what I've learned about God and how my relationship with God has grown. It's not about all the ins and the outs of the hard things that have happened to me. It's about the way that my heart has changed because of those things,
Right.
which I forget. And most of the time, especially through college, I think sharing my testimony or my story in coming to faith and then living out my faith has been, let me tell you about the really hard things that happened in my life. One, because that was a period in time where I was processing them.
Right.
And two, because I wanted people to know. And I felt like I
Like you
needed
were
the
valid.
attention because I needed people to know that I've been through hard things and this is what they were, and not feel bad for me, but almost have a little pity.
Right. Well, you wanted to feel seen in that.
Yes.
You wanted other people to know what you had gone through so that they could understand you more, which is so funny because, I do the same thing. I want them to know, I want them to understand me, but the testimony is not for them to understand me, it's for them to understand God
Yeah.
and God's heart. So, yeah, that's the biggest thing I would say with people that are nervous. They don't have an exciting testimony. It's like, well, take a step back, check that, and ask, are you trying to glorify yourself or are you trying to glorify God?
I need to ask myself that more often in my life.
I need to ask myself that every morning when I wake up. I should probably be like, Bailey, who are you going to glorify today? Yourself or God? And the answer should always be God.
Yeah. Same.
But I would say a lot of times I would pick myself, and that's not great,
I agree.
especially when emotions are high.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's important, and maybe we'll have to come back someday to sharing our testimony in a way that is glorifying to God. But I feel like
I also feel like they change throughout your life.
they so do. Oh my gosh.
Because there's
Yes.
different aspects where you think this is the important pivotal point in my testimony at this part, but I guarantee you in 5 years I'm going to have a different point where I won't even talk about the thing I used to talk about.
Right.
Or there's different testimonies for different people, like different groups. Like
Right.
I have a different testimony that I would share with a group of women that I might not share if it was a group
Yeah.
of guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so honestly, yeah, whatever testimony you are telling, as long as it's a testament to God's work in your life, then it's a
Right.
testimony.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess our encouragement this week, mostly to myself and to you and to those who happen to be listening.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding. Like, we do this to just have fun and like chit chat with each other. And to be honest, while we do this, I don't think about the people that are listening.
I forget people, like, not like we have a crazy amount of listeners, but I forget
No.
people listen and then they'll come up to me and they'll be like, oh, I listen to your podcast. I go,
Yeah.
oh, you used
Yeah.
to listen to us chat for an hour.
Right.
I hope you liked.
But I think the encouragement, I guess, for this week is just as you're living your faith and as we're going throughout our day, that question of, are we living to see what God is going to do in our life and to glorify Him? Or am I looking daily to what I want to get out of life or how
Right.
to glorify myself? Because it comes down to, yeah, sharing the gospel, but you don't get the opportunity to share the gospel every day unless you are a missionary in a far off country or a missionary in. We have friends that did Campus Crusade and they're like
Right.
meeting with people. It's like stuff like that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't, not in my profession and not in my daily
No.
life.
And sometimes you just go home and you are on your own.
Yeah. So I think it becomes, how can you show God to people around you each day?
Yeah.
And sometimes I don't think about that.
Yes. I think even just like becoming more conscious of it is a good start.
Yeah.
You know, like has this at least crossed my mind today? And then
Right.
eventually it's going to become that habit and you will start looking for it in everyday moments.
Right.
I think a lot of people too, this is my encouragement, is you want to go from 0 to 60. You want to go from you're doing absolutely nothing right now to being that all out, I'm going to share this with everyone, which is great. And I think we see it with new Christians a lot, but I also think that it leads to burnout.
I think the heart behind it is right.
Yes. I think the heart behind it is great, but I think we look at people like that, or we want to be that in ourselves, and we go, I want to go from this 0 to 60. But I think to create a routine and to create an actual, like, you're going to do this every day for the rest of your life, it has to be established through routine.
Yeah.
So, like, you do have to have that, I'm going to make sure that I do this specific thing, or I'm going to make sure I pray every morning about having this heart and doing this. And in turn, you're going to start, even if it's slowly, you're going to start looking for those things and finding those opportunities and seeking those things and starting those conversations. And it's just going to become a natural part of your life.
We started our conversation today with your history talking about prayer.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's funny but fitting, because I've found the times in life when I am the most prayerful and having conversations with God, the more I see the things I'm praying for. And it's not that I think they weren't happening. I think my eyes just weren't open to those things because I wasn't looking for them. And so I think probably even in life now, I'm probably missing moments where I could bring up my faith or talk about God more often. And because that's what maybe I'm not looking for in the moment, I miss them.
Right.
Well, thanks for joining us, and hopefully you got something from our podcast today. If you have other questions or anything faith related that you want to know, let us know.
DM us on Instagram.
Yeah.
That's probably the best way to reach us, to be honest.
Instagram, for sure.
Yeah, that would be checked the most often.
Well, as you're listening, go ahead, leave us a review, whether you listen on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify.
Right. Subscribe to our channels.
Yeah.
Put that little notification buzzer on.
We are now 2 episodes into season 2, so come back next Tuesday for episode 3.
Yeah, we're excited.
It's going to be a fun one.
Yes.